The day everything changed. Echoes of the past and present. A promise in the rain. One small act. One big ripple. The bell over the door jingled softly as Mark pushed it open, ushering his son Gabe inside the cozy diner. The warmth hit them instantly, a welcome contrast to the crisp evening air that had begun to settle over the town. This was their Wednesday ritual, a simple dinner out, just the two of them. It wasn't fancy, and it wasn't expensive, but it was theirs. Gabe loved the place, especially the corner booth where he could press his face against the window and watch the cars go by. Mark nodded at Doreen, the waitress who always worked the evening shift, and she smiled back, already pouring Gabe a chocolate milk from behind the counter. Mark led his son to the booth, and they settled in with the kind of comfort that only comes from familiarity. The diner wasn't busy tonight. A few scattered patrons, a couple eating quietly at the bar, and an elderly man reading the paper near the window. It was peaceful. "So," Mark asked, unfolding the menu, though he already knew what Gabe would order. "The usual?" Gabe grinned. "Mac and cheese. Extra cheese. No green stuff." Mark laughed, his chest rising with the warmth only a parent could understand. These moments mattered to him more than anything. He hadn't always been sure he could do this alone. Losing Eliza, his wife and Gabe's mom, 3 years ago had been like losing gravity itself. Cancer had taken her fast. Too fast for him to process, to plan, or to promise her everything she deserved. And yet, here they were, just the two of them, holding it together with duct tape and love. They placed their order, and Doreen brought over a plate of warm rolls. Gabe took one eagerly, slathering it with butter until it dripped over the edge. Mark watched him, resting his chin on one hand. How had his little boy grown up so much in just 3 years? It felt like time had moved faster since Eliza died, like the world was spinning on a different axis, slightly off kilter. Their food arrived, and for a while, there was nothing but the sound of forks clinking against plates, quiet conversation, and the occasional scrape of a coffee cup. Mark took his time, cutting into his fried chicken and savoring the gravy that soaked into the mashed potatoes. It wasn't gourmet, but it reminded him of simpler times, when life was whole, when laughter didn't have an undertone of grief. "Dad," Gabe said between mouthfuls, "can we do this forever?" Mark blinked, surprised. "Do what, buddy?" "Eat here every week, just us." He smiled. "As long as I'm around, we'll always have Wednesday nights." Gabe beamed, returning to his food with the singular focus only children can manage. Mark glanced out the window, thinking of how fragile promises could be. Still, he meant every word. He was just finishing his last bite when he heard Ida's soft voice behind him, unsure and thin. "Excuse me, sir, a broken bar, may we have your leftovers?" He turned, slowly, instinctively. The voice didn't belong to a server or another customer. It came from a boy, maybe 10 or 11, standing just a few feet away from their table. His clothes were oversized and worn. The sleeves of his sweatshirt had been cut and stitched, the collar frayed. Behind him stood 4 other children, stair-stepped in age and height, their faces pale and hungry, clothes mismatched and stained with the dust of the street. Mark opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. He blinked, trying to process what he was seeing. These were not children out on a dare or mischief. They were serious, quiet, and tired in a way kids shouldn't be. The boys' eyes are the ones that would haunt Mark long after this night held no mischief or pride, just a haunting vulnerability. "I'm sorry," the boy added, "we're just a broken bar, really hungry." Mark's gaze dropped to their hands. Empty. Not a toy, not a backpack, just each other. The older girl clutched the hand of the smallest, a toddler who clung to her leg as if it were her lifeline. Her little shoes had no laces, and her coat was missing buttons. Mark swallowed hard, his heart thudding in his chest. "Of course," he said quickly, standing up. "Of course you can. Please see here." He began pushing his plate and Gabe's toward the edge of the table, but it felt inadequate. They needed more than just scraps. He waved over Doreen. "Can you box all this up?" he asked. "And a broken bar, can we get a few more meals?" "Whatever's hot." Doreen glanced at the children, and her expression softened. She nodded and hurried off. Mark crouched down so he was eye level with the boy. "What's your name?" "Micah." He pointed at the others. "That's Ellie, she's 12. Then Joan is 9, Kayla's 6, Lily's almost 4. Mark looked at each of them, trying to smile without breaking. "Where are your parents?" Michael hesitated, his lips pressing together. "Our mom died 2 weeks ago. Car accident." Mark's breath hitched. "No, Dad," Micah continued. "Nobody came. They said someone would, but nobody did, so we left. We didn't have any food." "You've been on the streets?" Mark asked softly. Micah nodded. "We sleep behind the grocery store sometimes, or at the bus station if it's cold." Mark couldn't hold the emotion back. It rose like a tide in his throat. He blinked hard, biting the inside of his cheek to steady himself. Gabe had climbed out of the booth and now stood beside him, holding a roll he hadn't eaten. "You can have mine," Gabe said, holding it out to Kayla. She looked up at him, eyes wide, and took it with both hands. "Thank you," she whispered. Doreen came back with boxes and extra food. Mark helped distribute it, watching as the kids ate with silent urgency. No complaints, no fighting, just gratitude. As they ate, Mark listened. Ellie, the oldest, had kept them together. She'd tried calling social services, but they were told to wait and wait and wait. Nobody ever came. The fridge at home had gone empty 3 days before they left. They had one small bag with clothes, now buried behind the bushes where they slept. Mark sat back, staring at them as they finished the meal. He was struck by how normal they looked under the dirt and torn fabric. Just kids. Funny, curious, careful, and smart. Gabe laughed at something Jonah said, and it was as if a thread had already started weaving between them. When the plates were clean and the last bites gone, Mark stood. "I can't let you go back to the street." He didn't know what he was offering, but it had to be more than a warm dinner and a pat on the head. Doreen gave him a quiet nod. "I know someone at Child Protective Services. I'll make the call, but it might take time." Mark hesitated. He knew how these systems work. He'd or didn't. His own sister had tried to foster once and drowned in paperwork and delays. "Come home with us tonight," he said suddenly. "Just for tonight, until we figure this out." Michael looked uncertain. Ellie held Lily a little tighter. "I get it," Mark said. "I'm a stranger, but I'm a dad, too. You'll be safe. I swear." They followed him to his old sedan. Gabe insisted on holding Lily's hand. Mark called ahead to his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, to ask if she had any extra blankets. She did. She also made tea and met them with a stack of folded towels. That night, his small house became full for the first time in years. He gave up his bed, laid sleeping bags in the living room, and made peanut butter sandwiches just in case anyone woke up hungry. He stayed up long after the kids had fallen asleep, sitting in the dim light of the kitchen with a cup of cold tea in his hands. On the wall across from him hung a photo of Eliza. She was laughing in that moment, holding Gabe as a baby, her eyes alight with life. "I hope you'd be proud," he whispered. He didn't sleep much. He didn't need to. He felt alive in a way he hadn't since she passed. Like maybe all the pain had led him here for a reason. The next day brought phone calls, paperwork, and long waits, but also progress. The caseworker Doreen contacted showed up. She was shocked they had been missed, even more so that a stranger took them in. Temporary placement was approved. Background checks, home visits. Mark didn't flinch at any of it. He'd seen worse, done harder things. Weeks passed, then months. What started as leftovers turned into breakfasts before school, into rides to doctor appointments, into dance recitals and birthday parties, into bedtime stories and scraped knee bandages. They didn't call him Dad at first, but one by one, it came. Gabe didn't mind. He loved being the big brother, even though he wasn't the oldest. And Mark, he loved again. Not the same way he loved Eliza. That place in his heart would always be hers. But this was a new kind of love, a fierce, resilient kind, built not from romance but from raw, stubborn hope. And every now and then, when things felt overwhelming, he'd remember that night in the diner, the eyes that had broken him, the voice that had changed everything, and how he said yes when it would have been easier to say nothing.